All right. What is going on, everybody? And welcome to Y Nada Más a Real Madrid podcast. And it is time for another live stream. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to get used to it. Recording it live stream, recording it in real time, essentially, and getting everything done kind of out of the way. And it really helps me in the long run, actually. I feel like with editing and putting it up and trying to get you guys content out there a little quicker. So it's been about, I think the last one I did was last Friday, was about a week ago. And obviously we're in World Cup mode. So this is the Y Nada Más podcast, which is, of course, focused on Real Madrid. But, of course, since right now we have no club football, the focus is 100% on another huge football tournament that's going on in the world right now, and that is none other, of course, than the World Cup. So that is what we've been focusing on lately. And I mean, obviously, we've been watching the different performances of players that Real Madrid, obviously current Real Madrid players, but as well as current, in addition to current Real Madrid players, also, I would say, players that Real Madrid might be interested in. One of those, of course, I think is Jude Bellingham, who has been performing really well for the England national team. And then a lot of people, I mean, a lot of rumors, of course, with any World Cup have been popping up, which is essentially like we've been hearing about Cody Gakpo, we've been hearing about Bellingham, we've been hearing now about Enzo Fernandez out of Argentina. All these kind of things that are supposedly, have been linked with Real Madrid, and obviously Kylian Mbappe back in the conversation again. And I'll discuss that in a few minutes about Kylian Mbappe and where I kind of stand on that whole thing, as well as, maybe some predictions of my own or observations of my own on the current state, essentially, of the games and where we're at right now. So right now it is currently Sunday, December 4th. So today the games were France eliminated Poland and England eliminated Senegal. And then yesterday was the beginning of the round of 16 where Argentina eliminated Australia and the Netherlands eliminated the United States. So, that's where I'm at right now. So if you are listening on the audio version, obviously the audio version is after I've done the live stream. So those games may or may not have happened already when you're listening to this. So, just letting you know. So basically, if you guys want to catch the live streams, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to do them every Sunday at 10 p.m. That's 10 p.m. Eastern time. That is when I'm going to start doing them, or 10:30. I started at 10:30 today, but usually I'm going to put it at 10 p.m. Eastern time. I have that scheduled on the Twitch, and I'm going to have that scheduled here on YouTube. But also, in addition to that, obviously you're going to get your same content. It would be basically like I'm doing the podcast, only that I do it I'm recording a live stream, and then, people might comment or whatnot. As of right now, I announced this late, so I'm not seeing anybody right now in the chat jumping on or anything like that. But anyway, if you guys want to continue, I know it's been, we have been off and on and kind of inconsistent. But the idea is, as I have said in the last podcast, was that we've been upgrading the systems. Our systems, well, essentially the computer. We've been upgrading, the camera. We've been, as you can see, we upgraded a little bit on the design here. I've been adding things to the studio. I actually got a really cool, scarf from Real Madrid. They sent it to me because I'm a card-carrying Madridista, essentially, and I think it was because, not trying to toot my own horn here, but my birthday was on December 2nd. Your boy officially turned 40 fucking years old. I'm an old man. And so anyway, that is, and just so you guys know, I have a regular day job. This is not what I do for a living. I wish I could do just football podcast for a living, but I'm not in that conversation yet. My son has been pushing me to do live streams. He's a 7-year-old kid that's watching Mr. Beast and all that kind of stuff. So he's been asking me that, hey, you should try your hand at live stream. You should try to get more viewers and stuff like that. So, with him in mind, and then, with, people online and other, some of you guys pushing, telling me on Twitter, and then, I have Trombak wanting to do some more content as well, which he couldn't join me for this one, but I'm sure he'll join me at some other point, as well as Halal. And then I have other people, my good friend Jota, who does a Real Madrid podcast in Spanish. He might jump on and do this as well. So we got a bunch of different ones that we could essentially do, so. But the idea is to continue growing this thing. And like I said, it was really becoming kind of taxing the last time to put all of this stuff together and then get it edited and then, audio and everything. So we're kind of trying to do it in a system where it's a lot easier to get things sort of churned out and I can kind of just jump on. So it was really tough with the computer that we had. It was kind of lagging behind. And so we just, wanted to invest in putting that in there and, getting a switcher and getting all sorts of different things. So, we can also throw content up on the screen. So if you guys are listening to the audio version, just know that, in the video version, which you can either, check it out on YouTube, which is at Y Nada Más Podcast on YouTube and at Y Nada Más Podcast on Twitch. You can actually check us out there. And see the video version. The video version is still going to exist, obviously, on our YouTube channel, so you guys can check that out. But you'll see, I'm going to throw things up on the screen, whether it's stats or whatever. I'm not a big dude about stats. I think they're great, for kind of seeing, who performed well or not. But I think they don't really tell the whole story. I think people a lot of times like to base themselves off of stats, and that doesn't always tell the whole story, especially we now see with possession, how possession is really not the be-all, end-all of football. Possession doesn't really mean anything if you're not scoring goals, and we've seen that as football has evolved from, sort of the tiki-taka era and, of Spanish national team and Barcelona of having all this possession and playing around with the ball and then, very, very sort of more vertical, more direct attacks where, the team might just sit back and wait and then attack you on a counter, which is, speaking a little bit of what we saw over the weekend, the Netherlands did masterfully against the United States, basically handing them the possession and kind of seeing what they would do with it. And I think the U.S. wasn't ready to have that much possession, wasn't ready for that. I think they kind of took them out of their element, and also kind of rope-a-doping them. But I'll get into that in a second. So anyway, guys, you can follow us at Y Nada Más Podcast on Twitter, at Y Nada Más Podcast on Facebook, at Y Nada Más Podcast, like I said, on YouTube and Twitch. Our website is ynadamas.net, where you can find the audio versions of the podcast and other articles that we put up during the regular season. Right now, Trombak is focused on some other stuff. He hasn't really written anything for the page right now. But, once we get back to Real Madrid ways, that'll go back to normal. But anyway, so in this case, you can also check us out on Instagram at YNM Podcast. So one thing, guys, if you can help out, you can, jump on, subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe, get us more views, get us more followers. Essentially, we can have a chat here. We can essentially, go back and forth with, what your thoughts are on the team as a whole. And, on the team for Real Madrid, or your thoughts on other games that are happening, whether in La Liga or anywhere else. If it becomes, we talk about transfer news, we talk about other things like that. But in this case, also about, of course, the World Cup and what we're talking about now, which is, what's going on right now, which is we're in the quarterfinal, sorry. We're in the round of 16 of the World Cup. So with that said, guys, what do we have? I mean, essentially we have right now, here is a quick look, I guess, if we want to, take a quick look at the bracket. And, the bracket's looking like this right now. Essentially, as I said yesterday, Netherlands defeats the United States 3-1. Argentina defeats Australia 2-1. Netherlands sets up a matchup for the Netherlands versus Argentina on Friday. And then today we had England versus Senegal, who won the game 3-0, and France, who beat Poland 3-1, setting up an eventual huge clash there, which is England versus France. So, one of the things that I kind of said at the beginning of this whole, one of the things I said at kind of the beginning of this whole World Cup, and I've kind of always felt this way, is I kind of want to see, a lot of times you want to go for the underdog, or you want to see somebody that's never won it, win it, right? So we've had two teams that essentially have won the World Cup before, in the likes of Uruguay, initial, I guess, the inaugural World Cup winners in the 30s. They're out. We've seen Germany, surprisingly, for the second World Cup in a row, go out. But now we're still left. It's kind of falling into where we might see the heavy hitters that we've are used to seeing kind of jump back into the fray. So you have Netherlands versus Argentina. Although Netherlands, obviously has always they've always had incredible teams over the years, but never won the cup. So that'd be interesting to see them. Argentina hasn't won a cup since 1986. Obviously, England hasn't won one since, what is it, like 66, I believe it is. So France, obviously, the defending champions. But we're also going to see, we're going to see Morocco versus Spain on Tuesday. So Spain could potentially, a former World Cup winner can be in that group against either Portugal or Switzerland. And then, of course, Brazil plays tomorrow, and we can see, another heavy hitter in there kind of getting through. But so far, the round of 16 hasn't really given us, I think, the round of 16 hasn't given us any surprises. So the beginning of the World Cup gave us plenty of surprises, obviously. But while it gave us plenty of surprises, the World Cup, I'm wondering if, while it gave us some big surprises, it didn't really change the dynamic, I think, in some of the main guys getting through. So, we're seeing the Argentinas, we're seeing the Netherlands, we're seeing England and France. Spain is still there. Portugal is still there. Brazil, what we've seen is maybe guys that aren't usually contenders. Obviously a lot of, South American teams are not playing. Uruguay is out. Ecuador is out. So South American teams got there. None of the CONCACAF teams made it through. We don't usually see CONCACAF teams making it through. So there's not really a team that I'm thinking is surprising as much. But I would say, if Morocco gets by Spain, that would be a huge upset. Obviously, if Switzerland beats Portugal, which I think is actually a little bit of a tighter game. If Japan, if Japan gets through Croatia, Japan, I think, can go on a run. Croatia is still an interesting team with the likes of Luka Modric. So there is. I feel like, while we had a surprising and very interesting group stage where, Argentina gets beat by Saudi Arabia, no team actually made it out of the group stage with the 9 points. So we saw some crazy games there. I think today we really didn't get any. I'm sorry. These first two match days of the round of 16, we haven't really seen, I think, surprises as of yet. Obviously, Argentina was the favorite to go through against Australia, and they did it. Netherlands. I think people were thinking the United States was going to be a little bit more of play a little bit more of a role there, but definitely the Netherlands have shown us, and I want to get into the Netherlands in a second because they have rapidly become sort of, after that game against the United States, they've been kind of a team that I think, hey guys, you guys got to pay attention to these guys. So I would say Netherlands versus the United States. Many people saw it as being a 50-50 game. Netherlands definitely showed that it's not going to be, and that their experience in this tournament and their experience, obviously, under Louis van Gaal is going to play, played a role in them getting, beating the United States. Then we have England versus Senegal. Senegal gave them some scares, but England in the end playing really well, and getting three big goals, and Kane getting back on the score sheet. Breaking his duck, essentially. So that is something interesting to see. Bukayo Saka, getting a goal there. Jordan Henderson. I think they're playing pretty well, England. I'm still not entirely convinced about them. We'll see how they play against France. I was seeing a lot of things on ESPN and other places where they're kind of putting France and England, saying it's an equal matchup. Honestly, I think France is a little bit, especially with guys like Mbappe, and other players on the team. I think Dembele is a great player, although he's not, he makes some crazy, weird decisions sometimes in the final third. Giroud is obviously a killer in front of goal. He's proved it for France, essentially, beating the likes of, beating the scorer, the record for France in overcoming the that record set by Thierry Henry. So he is France's all-time leading scorer. So he's not too shabby, obviously. And then you have a midfield with guys like Tchouaméni. I wouldn't say I'm too a big fan of Rabiot, but you have really talented players as well, and Lucas Hernandez and Varane, and so Koundé playing there in a position that's not really his his usual position. And this is, and mind you, this is a France, with Griezmann as well. And mind you, this is a France that is missing a lot of very talented players, right? President Kimpembe, obviously Lucas Hernandez got out in the beginning. We're not seeing the likes of Benzema. So this is a team that is missing some key players there, essentially. Paul Pogba, these guys. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to go. But they still seem like they're killers, even though Poland, once again, gave them some scares at the beginning, similar to what Senegal did to England. But once they get into the flow of the game, these teams that are less experienced, or less used to, I would say, being the teams that upset people, or get into the quarterfinals or semifinals, they really kind of end up, after a while getting a few chances, end up punching against their weight, So England defeats Senegal and France defeats Poland. So, one of the games I wanted to talk about was essentially the game with, the United States versus the Netherlands. I think a lot of people were not convinced with the Netherlands at the beginning. I think, the group stage for the Netherlands wasn't something that seemed too difficult for this team. They had, in their group, they had Ecuador. In their group, they had Qatar. And then they had Senegal in their group. So essentially not really something that you would say, the Dutch are going to have a lot of problems with. But they weren't the Dutch of old. They weren't the Dutch that we've seen, what we in Spanish we call, la naranja mecánica is what we call them in Spanish. Or that basically comes from like a Clockwork Orange. But la naranja mecánica was because they just played that idea of total football, that Cruyff style football, which essentially, is that style of football was essentially what became, I think for a lot of you Barcelona fans, essentially became sort of the Barcelona style of playing football, where everyone is involved in both the defense and the attack, and they're very good on the ball, and essentially, it's just very beautiful football to watch. And the Netherlands isn't playing like that anymore. The Netherlands is playing a very pragmatic football. We're seeing, the three at the back with, the game against the United States. They had Timber. They had, they had Virgil van Dijk, Nathan Ake, playing a three at the back. And then you have your two wing backs and Denzel Dumfries and Daley Blind, and then you have your midfield. You have your midfield players with the likes of Frankie de Jong, who in this case he had De Roon next to him in there in the midfield. And then you also had the likes of, you have Cody Gakpo, you have Memphis Depay, which, I want to shout out because honestly, listen, man, because he plays for Barcelona, and because he's not had a good time at, let's say, Manchester United, hasn't really done well, did pretty well at Lyon, but not as well as, I think as expected. At Manchester United definitely didn't do as well as expected. At Barcelona has, fallen down the pecking order, especially with the likes of Robert Lewandowski coming into the team. But it's really interesting. For me, it's really interesting to see Memphis Depay with this Netherlands team, because I remember anytime I would watch the Netherlands, I remember in 2014, because they weren't in 2018, but I remember in the 2014 World Cup when Memphis Depay played, he came on a lot of times as a substitute. He was always the most dangerous player. And then anytime I've seen him play for the national team, he always steps it up. It's like there are players that we've seen in the past that do really well on their national teams, but don't do well in their club teams. Or then you have the vice versa. They're very good on their club teams, but they can't translate that same form to their national teams for whatever reason. Say a Robert Lewandowski, hasn't really been able to pull anything together with Poland. Yeah, some decent players on the team, but not killers. Argentina, Messi, since they haven't won since 1986. They've had the likes of Messi, Di Maria, Dybala, Higuain. They've had El Kun Agüero. They've had all these great players on the team, but they still haven't been able to replicate. I think El Kun was never able to replicate the same, obviously, amazing form he had at Manchester City in Argentina. The same thing you could be saying maybe for Higuain, that was a killer at, was very good at Real Madrid, very good, obviously, in Napoli and in Juventus, but couldn't translate that to the national team. Same thing with Messi. Messi, I think, just in his fifth World Cup, is essentially getting his first goal in the knockout stages. So, it's always been like sort of those underperformers when it's with their national team. And so going back to Memphis Depay, it's like he's the opposite of that. Seems to always perform with his national team. And he looked absolutely, for me, looked like the complete danger man, the go-to guy for this Dutch team in the attack. Maybe it was because everybody's been focusing so much on Cody Gakpo, because Cody Gakpo's been doing really well, playing really well in the Eredivisie, and then of course, he scored in every single game the Dutch had played in the group stage. That maybe a lot of focus was on him, so it was able to pull defenders away from Memphis Depay. But Memphis Depay was essentially dancing in the box and causing havoc. I think for that U.S. team. So and honestly, like I said, I saw a very pragmatic team, very good in the midfield, with the likes of course of Frankie De Jong. De Roon did a good job. Obviously, Klaassen is a very talented player as well. He's very good. Can kind of play anywhere on the pitch. Frankie De Jong, as much as as a Madridistas, you want to hate on him or whatever. I like to look at these games as something out of sort of the microcosm of club football, and just look at the players in their national teams, without looking at who they really play for, But I think Frankie De Jong has been doing a good job. He's elegant on the ball. He does what he does. He's good at passing. He's good at making runs forward. At Real Madrid, we always compare him with the Fede Valverde, and Valverde is absolutely phenomenal. And I think Valverde is a better player, at least for me, obviously. But that's because I'm biased towards Real Madrid. But, Valverde is kind of in his Uruguay team is the only guy who's really, progressing the ball that way. Whereas I feel in the Dutch team, there are quite a few that do that. You have Davy Klaassen, you have Denzel Dumfries, as that right back, as that right wing back. You're having all of these different, players that will advance forward. Timber going up to also it likes to move forward. You just have a more complete, I feel like, the midfield, and there's more overloads. You're seeing more overloads there from this team. And it just looked so good, so controlled, where, somebody was talking about it. I think it was on ESPN FC, where they were saying it was like Louis van Gaal played sort of rope-a-dope with the United States, essentially kind of that Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope, and gave them the ball, which I think caught the U.S. off guard, because the U.S. wasn't, I think, a lot of people, if you would have told them, hey, the U.S. is going to dominate possession against the Dutch national team, a lot of people would have told you, yeah, that's probably not how it's going to go, but it was also because it was by design. They were letting the United States go and take that possession, and then just trying to see what they were going to do with it. And I think being caught off guard like that, they were caught off guard with how much possession they were giving. Maybe, not maybe, essentially, from what we've seen from the comments by Louis van Gaal, is essentially saying, we made the adjustments. We knew what we wanted to do. They never made any adjustments. So it's sort of getting them comfortable with the ball, putting numbers forward, moving up their lines, getting comfortable and sort of bombing forward, getting comfortable, sort of lulling him into this sense of complacency or comfort with the ball and moving forward, that essentially they left their back line, and they left themselves exposed to counterattacks with two players who are quick, very quick in the likes of Cody Gakpo and Memphis Depay, and then later Bergwijn. So essentially you were able to bring those guys as soon as, the U.S. lost a lot of possession, and then essentially they were able to counter that. They were able to counter that and break on the counter. Like I said, they were doing really good job, especially with Denzel Dumfries, who's, honestly, he's becoming a player that I really like. Denzel Dumfries up that right-hand side, that right flank, just bombing down that right flank. And really, it was 2 carbon copy goals where essentially, they overload. They bring in a bunch of people essentially into the box. The entire Dutch team runs up when they lose possession, when the United States lost possession. So they were really good in that transition from defending to attack. They moved all the way up very quickly with Denzel Dumfries there, and Denzel Dumfries sort of waiting there on the flank, waiting for his team to arrive. And part of me wonders if they were thinking that, because of the Dutch height, or because of, maybe the style of football they want to play, maybe they were thinking, I'm going to try and, throw some cross into the box, essentially. I'm going to cross into the box and maybe, they were going to try to cross into the box and get some headers. That's what Holland was going to do. And what they did was very good, which I think was, you have these tall, lanky, I would say somewhat clumsy American center backs, which I think, I'm not trying to insult them, but I'm just saying that's kind of what they were, they were, I would say they're not the best center backs. Tim Ream, essentially was just brought into this United States team at the last minute, so they attacked that. So essentially what they did is they go up that sideline and then they go up that flank and then cross the ball into a box, but it's a low driven pass to the center, and someone's coming up. It's a diagonal pass back, and somebody just comes running into the box and slots it home. And that's what they did with Memphis Depay. And then the crazy thing is, after getting that scored on them, you let a guy like Daley Blind, who's essentially, a slow defender, leave him completely unmarked. Essentially no one's following his run into the box. He's not a quick guy, but he shows up. When he did that, when that goal comes in the second half, right before halftime, it was like, where, when they passed that, and I just saw Daley Blind sort of walk into the box he was in his own house essentially, with nobody covering, nobody following him into the box, and put that ball in. Then you're like, I really don't see the U.S. coming back from this at all. They could have, they scored that goal. That was, can you really, honestly, man, not to take anything away from the United States, but I don't really call that goal. It went in the net, but they didn't even know how it went in the net. Nobody knows how it went in the net. Bounces off Haji Wright's foot, essentially. He doesn't even know anything about it. Takes a crazy, weird spin and essentially goes into the top left-hand corner of the Dutch goal, and that's what we scored. That's how they scored. And then you have essentially when they're riding high on that, they continue to push numbers forward. The Dutch continue to play calm and cool and collected, and after a while you have another crazy defensive lapse. I was showing that defensive lapse by the United States to my son, which is where I'm just like, look at the back there. My son's 7, man. He's only playing, essentially what, pee-wee soccer, under U8 soccer, essentially right now. So I'm like, who do you think is going to score this goal? Telling my son, who do you think is going to score this goal? Look at this guy in the back there. Look at this guy. And my son even asked, is that the United States goal or is that the Dutch goal? Essentially thinking that, Daley Blind is back there because he's covering his own net, And I'm like, no, that's the U.S. That's the U.S. goal. He's just creeping up there. And, we watched it and you could see it. It's not like it's a fast play. It's several seconds of, essentially him just standing there. Denzel Dumfries could have sat down and had himself a cup of tea waiting there. for that ball to come in, and I don't think anybody would have noticed that he was there. It was just bad defending, and they just cross it to him, and he scores the goal, and just the dagger is in the hearts of the Americans. So with that said, kudos to the Dutch team. Actually, I think they showed us something, which is that this Dutch team is going to play pragmatic football. They're going to wait, but they're very organized. They're intelligent. They're not looking to play beautiful football. And one of the things I saw this guy, I forgot his name is Mario Melchut, I think his name is. Used to play obviously for the Dutch national team, played for Ajax, played for Birmingham City. So one of the things I saw that he said that was interesting to me was that there's been a lot of criticism by the Dutch media for, this style of football that the Dutch are playing. And, what he was saying was essentially that a lot of people are not liking it because it's, again, it's very pragmatic. It's not the football, the pretty football that they're used to playing. And, they don't like what they're seeing. It's boring football, essentially. But he said something. He goes, we've played beautiful football for many years, and we've still never won the World Cup. So maybe Louis van Gaal is finally saying, now it's time to try something else. And I would say don't sleep on this team. Don't sleep on this team. I'm actually liking them. Like I said, I'm trying to go for the teams that have never won before. So I would kind of like for the Dutch to make a run. And that means, and with that said, let's jump into essentially the next game that happened, which was the Australia versus Argentina game. And I got to tell you, man, I am not impressed with Argentina. That whole idea of Barcelona that had the Messi dependencia or Messi dependency. I see it still with this Argentinian team. I see them. Anytime Rodrigo de Paul gets the ball, I don't know if he's his personal bodyguard, if he's his best friend. I don't know what it is, but essentially Rodrigo de Paul is just always with Messi, wherever but photos there are, wherever, it's essentially like, I don't know, like they're best buddies or something. To not put it in a different way, but it's funny because to me, it's just strange. And it seems like Rodrigo de Paul, everyone in that team is always looking up to see where Messi is and then passing the ball to him. And that, like, it seems like nobody is willing to try and take a shot on goal before it's gone through Messi. Now, I don't know if that's by design. I don't know if that's what Scaloni wants. I don't know if that's what Messi wants, essentially. But this team has looked very, very not unbalanced. They looked, they just look out of control, out of sorts at times. I think they look nervy. Unless Messi is the one that pops up and does something, it's not like they can get their engines running. And, let's be real. Look at the teams they've had to face. Saudi Arabia beat them, obviously shell-shocked them a little bit. Then they play against Mexico, who this is obviously one of the worst Mexican sides we've seen in quite some time, and not like Mexico is a world beater, but this was definitely one of the worst Mexican sides we've seen in a while. Even Mexicans would say it to you. And then essentially they played a Poland, which is really Robert Lewandowski and how they say Robert in Spanish, Robert Lewandowski and 10 más, or so Robert Lewandowski and 10 other people. That's essentially what Poland is. So they haven't really had a test. And then they play Australia, which was another team that was surprisingly, they even made it to the World Cup because they played Peru, and Peru was playing, I think, pretty well in CONMEBOL in the South American qualifiers. Did pretty well, and I thought they were going to, usually when CONMEBOL has to play the repechaje, or what is essentially the sort of the playoff, the fifth placed team has to play that playoff round against one of the teams from the Asian Federation. Usually we always beat them. I'm saying we as in the Latin teams kind of always win those. Well, usually it's like New Zealand. They have to play New Zealand to get through, or they have to play Australia to get through. And it's usually, always a lot of times the CONMEBOL team wins, so the South American team goes through. surprisingly enough, Peru didn't, missed a lot of chances, didn't go through, and so Australia got through. But Australia was a team that not a lot of people had on their radar. Not a lot of people thought they were going to do well. I don't think they were a team that surprised. I mean, I don't think they were a team that really did much in the group stage aside from, a couple surprises. I guess, what was it? I don't even remember who they played. Would they play Cameroon or something? I forgot what group they were in. They were in the group with France, Denmark, and what was that other team? Tunisia, right? So, they weren't really in that was a easy giveaway group to France. And the one that surprised everybody was just how bad, because you would look at that group on paper and everyone thought, Denmark is essentially going to go through. I think Denmark was a favorite for many people. They were my dark horse, and they just completely crapped the bed because that team just played terrible throughout the entire tournament. And for Australia to get through, everybody had this Argentina going through. But I didn't expect to see Argentina suffer the way they did against Australia. So, they get that first goal, which obviously was a magic from Messi, and I could see it coming from a mile away. I don't know. I don't know. With all due respect to the Australians, I don't know a lot of the Australian players. So I remember that somebody fouls him. He's giving Messi attitude. He's like telling him things. And if one thing I know is, don't piss off Messi, because Messi will essentially try to get one up on you, and he has done it to other teams before. But you give him any space in the box or give him a free kick or anything like that, he's going to take those opportunities. And if you give him a split second to have a good look on goal, he's going to score. Most of the time, he's going to score, unless it's a penalty. But he's going to score, So that goal, Messi magic, boom, he got it. He scored that. Then essentially a really terrible mix-up by Matt Ryan there, who's the goalkeeper for Australia. And Julian Alvarez scores the second goal. And then you think they were riding high, and then that goal which was a fluke goal essentially from Australia, they take a shot. It bounces off, I believe it was Enzo Fernandez. It bounced off. It goes into the net. It's 2-1. There's still time left in the game. And you would see, they were honestly, Australia could have scored 2 goals that they missed. They had 2 really, really good chances. That run in the box by Besic or whatever his name is. He ran into the box and dribbled through a couple of defenders and then scored. Then almost scored. And then the other player for Australia that almost scored in the final dying minutes of the game. They were really worried. Argentina was very worried in those last few minutes about Australia. And the thing is, it was Australia. And in the first, like I said, with all due respect, this was a team that nobody thought was going to get there. Just play, don't have the players, I think, to really cause you a problem. And now Argentina is going to face the Netherlands, who I feel like are definitely coming into their own and understanding their style of football. I don't think Argentina has really a plan set in motion aside from, giving the ball to Messi and seeing what kind of magic he can conjure up. I definitely think that Netherlands is the one that's going to beat Argentina and send them home. Unless, Messi has the game of his life, which unfortunately for Messi fans, and yes, this coming from a bias of being a Real Madrid fan, but Messi sometimes doesn't show up in some of these bigger games, these games where there's a lot more on the line, when there's players that are pressuring him or players that are sort of on his ass, not letting him play. And I think the Dutch are going to be very strategic about how they play this game, and they are going to cause problems for Messi. They are going to most likely lock him down as much as they possibly can, because you can't lock down Messi. Even as a Madridista, I could tell it's very difficult to lock down Messi completely for like 90 minutes where he's not going to get a shot or not going to get a look or not going to get a chance. It's hard to completely lock him down. But we've seen that when he gets frustrated, when he gets locked down, he kind of goes back into that mode where he starts getting frustrated, starts walking the pitch, hanging his head low. And I think that is essentially what the Dutch can possibly do. And when you take Messi out of the equation, how does this Argentina team react? Who do they have that is going to put goals into the net? Because we've seen Lautaro, missed some what seemed easy chances versus Australia. Di Maria's not playing it, but Di Maria is also getting older. He's not the same player he was in the past. I don't know who Julian Alvarez is a player there. Enzo Fernandez is a player there that can essentially do something. I think McAllister has done pretty good, but I just don't see a team that's going to be able to, that is organized, that is going to be able to break down this Dutch team, especially the defense that the Dutch have. And, as much as people who don't like Van Dijk or people who don't like Liverpool want to shit on Van Dijk is a solid defender. And he's had a solid World Cup so far. Nathan Ake, pretty good player as well. Timber has been good for Ajax, I think. They're not world beaters, except I would say for Van Dijk, who's been a solid player. But Denzel Dumfries, Cody Gakpo, Frankie de Jong. I think, they have other people there on the bench they're going to bring in that they brought in after De Roon got out. They brought in Koop Miners to sort of patch up that midfield and give more fresh legs. They brought in Bergwijn, so there are players there that they have that if Argentina gives them the opportunity the way they did to Australia at the end of the game and at points in the game, you're not facing, I don't know, Aaron Moy and these other guys, Matthew Leckie and these other guys that Australia has. You're facing guys like Memphis Depay, Gakpo, Frankie de Jong, Bergwijn that can put goals in the net. And I really think if they take Messi out of the equation, Argentina's going to have a tough time with this team. So I think the Netherlands beats Argentina, sends Messi home. And then even if they go through, it still remains to be seen what happens with Brazil. But, if Brazil makes it and they end up going to the semifinals, which everyone thinks is going to be the semifinal, where they end up going against Brazil, I think the Brazilian team right now defeats this Argentina. This is not the same Brazil from the Copa America. I think it's a different mindset. It's not a Copa America that was kind of brought together in the last minute in the throes of COVID, so I think the opportunities there for I think Argentina is going to have a tough time, as much as people want Messi to win. And that's not to say, like, on the other side, that because I love Cristiano and I'm kind of going for Portugal, that Portugal is going to have an easy route. I see them having a tough game against Switzerland on Tuesday. It's another team that these European teams that are just organized, kind of are very set in the way they're playing. Although I've seen a better coaching from Fernando Santos Santos. I've seen better coaching from him in this World Cup so far. I think Cristiano Ronaldo kind of taking a step back and saying, let the boys play. If they score, it's great. If I score, awesome. But I'm not gonna take anything away from them. So they're not feeling, I think, the pressure that Portugal. A lot of these players, I think, playing with somebody like Cristiano gives sometimes players a feeling that they have to, they have to pass the ball to Cristiano, give the ball to Cristiano, sort of kind of how the Messi situation goes with Argentina. But I think in this case, with Ronaldo being 37, I feel like Ronaldo has kind of taken a step back, and with all the controversy going on with Manchester United and whatnot, and people saying, he's making everything about him. I think he's taken an interesting step where he's sort of being like, let these guys play. If they score, great. If I score, great. I'm not going to take anything away from them, which takes off a little bit of pressure from these guys to always feel like, where's Cristiano on the field? I have to make sure I pass to Cristiano, and going for it. On their own, which they have players that can completely do that, like Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, Rafael Leao, Joao Felix. You have a killer team there that can essentially put goals, and in the net and do something. So it's gonna be a tight game with Switzerland. I still think there are surprises left in this quarterfinal. In this round of 16 that can end up, throwing a monkey wrench into the situation, So I think Japan is going to be a strange one. I mean, I want Croatia to win because, I'm a Luka Modric fan through and through. As you can see, I have his number 19 jersey right there in the back of me. When he was out with Madrid and he was number 19. But, I'm a Luka Modric fan through and through. I would love to see Croatia make another good run. I think they're playing some good football as well. That midfield with Brozovic, Kovacic, and Modric, it looks fantastic. I think they can make a run, but Japan is looking good. Then you have Spain versus Morocco, which I think has a very interesting socio-political feel to it, with so many players that are Moroccan, some of them being Spanish-born, but they're playing for Morocco. Also some of them, essentially playing in Spain. A lot of them play in Spain and know the Spanish style of football, so that can be interesting. They're all looking really good. Morocco was one of those teams that I think they didn't lose any of their games at all. Like they tied and they got through. So I think Morocco is an interesting team. Team there. So I think there's still going to be some surprises. I just hope it's not Portugal, and I hope it's not Croatia. And then we'll see where it goes. But yeah, so moving on to the next game, obviously, was England versus Senegal. Well, actually, let's go to the France versus who do they play? Poland. Sorry. So France played Poland, not disrespecting Poland. I just had slipped my mind. But, Poland, like I said, it's Robert Lewandowski and 10 other guys. Put up a pretty nice fight at the beginning of the game. But then, Mbappe gets going, and Mbappe just another player, man, another level of player. Listen, here's one of the things I wanted to bring up, because a lot of things have been said about Mbappe, and I was one of them to say it. I'm absolutely, as a Madridista, I dislike the guy, and I dislike the guy not because of his football. He is a phenomenal player. I think he's a diva. I think he's greedy. I think essentially, he kind of showed his real face essentially when in this negotiation with all the back and forth, and I'm not sure, and I don't know, and then his family getting in the mix, and then Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, getting in the mix, and then of course Nasser Al-Khelaifi and Al-Thani and everybody in the state of Qatar, essentially the country of Qatar, being on his side or trying to convince this guy to go. So essentially there's a lot of stuff, but he was promised a lot of things, and that's kind of why he maybe made that decision in the end. But, we're seeing that he's unhappy, or we're hearing rumors that he's kind of unhappy. So what's going to happen after this World Cup? Sometimes I wonder if he wins the World Cup with France, that would be his second World Cup, and is he going to want another challenge? Like, is he going to want to come to Real Madrid? Let's say if PSG doesn't win, there's a couple different things that can happen where he feels like he's just out of sorts and he'll want to come calling to Madrid again. And here's the thing. A lot of Madridistas, as we say in Spanish, no lo quieren ver ni en pintura, which means they don't even want to see a painting of the guy. They hate him that much for what he did. And that, we are very, Madridistas are very proud. Basically, saying, hey, the train for Real Madrid only passes once, so you missed it. You're screwed. We don't want you anymore. We don't need you anymore. And is that really true? Do we not need him anymore? Do any of you think, of those of you that are in the chat, do you think that we don't need him anymore? That we could get along and win without the likes of somebody like Mbappe? I think we could do it, but Benzema is getting older. We don't have a backup number 9. Yes, we have Vinicius, and he's playing well, but can he, can we afford really, if Mbappe really does want to come to Real Madrid, are we really not going to, I feel like Madridistas wouldn't let go of their pride a bit and say, listen, if he wants to come here, by all means, bring him here, I think he would have trouble winning over the fan base, the diehard, which I am a diehard, but I'm not a diehard that wants. I mean, it's like I was saying it on Twitter. I said I dislike the guy. I think he's a diva. I think he's shown to be a diva. I think he's going to want a lot of things his way in Madrid. We'll have to see how much of that Florentino is going to acquiesce, like how much he's going to give up, room to Mbappe. I don't think it's going to be very much, So we have to see how much he's really going to try to take over the dressing room in a way, is how much he's going to sort of calm his diva mentality and really, try to fit in with the group. He's going to have a tough time, I think, winning over a lot of people that felt slighted by him. I think he's going to get boos in the Bernabeu. I think he's going to feel not a sort of cold reception. But listen, guys, we in football, Madridista, even the most diehard Madridista that hates Mbappe right now, will most likely clap for him, scream for him, and celebrate for him if he scores goals for Real Madrid. And if he starts banging them in on a regular basis, which at this point we know he can, I think he will win back the fans very quickly. It's like that Gladiator, those famous quotes from Gladiator, win the crowd and you will win your freedom. And in this case, his freedom is the freedom from the rejection or the feelings of rejection that many Madridistas have of him, and the disdain that many of them have for him, or the feelings of betrayal they have for him. So if he is able to entertain the crowd, if he is able to score and win the crowd, and those things are going to be forgotten. And I think they'll be forgotten quickly if he does very well, which I think he can do very well. But this still is all speculation. It remains to be seen, of course. But, Mbappe he's playing incredibly well. He seems absolutely unstoppable when he gets going. He's, once again, jumping into that position of being the star and leading his team on one of the biggest stages, in the world, which is the World Cup. He did it already in 2018, being a breakout star, obviously, and for the French national team. He's doing it again. He's already surpassed Messi and Ronaldo. Granted, Messi and Ronaldo are still in the World Cup, but he's surpassed the amount of goals that they've scored. So I think he can break I think he can continue to break their record. And since they're probably not going to be in the 2026 World Cup, he can continue on doing so, maybe even making a run at, Miroslav Klose and Ronaldo's, their runs at, highest scorer ever in a World Cup. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with that and where Mbappe is going to go. But I tell you guys, I think he's phenomenal. He's winning me over with his football on the field. Whether or not I'd like to see him in a Madrid jersey remains to be seen. Is it going to be some other sort of dramatic, story again and back and forth and TikTok from Chiringuito and all this stuff in the press and rumors and all that. If it happens again, I don't think I can take it. And I'm not going to just sit there and speculate and think, yeah, he's going to come, because that's how he had us feeling, and I just don't think that's going to happen. And then, so of course, the next one to talk about is England. England played their game against Senegal. Senegal did a pretty good job at, trying to attack them at the beginning. And then England, basically just got going, and, their midfield with Declan Rice and Jordan Henderson and Jude Bellingham, who obviously is somebody that Real Madrid is looking at, were able to shut them down. And then their attack, with Harry Kane and Phil Foden, who I think should have been playing way earlier than he started now, with now that, they were starting with Mason Mount, and I definitely don't think that was the best choice. I think Phil Foden has definitely proven to be a better player than Mount. especially in the last few games for Manchester City. Raheem Sterling, unfortunately, of course, had to go and takes care of some personal things, so that leaves it open for Phil Foden. Then, you also have Bukayo Saka, who's been doing a good job. He scored a goal today. I think they have a very solid team. I think England has a very solid team, a very solid midfield. Defending wise, and obviously Kyle Walker, he's going to be the one in charge of trying to, going past, they scored 3 goals against Senegal. They pretty much dominated them at most points of the game. If not the entire game, just after the first maybe 20 minutes where Senegal was doing something, 20, 30 minutes, where I started seeing the faces of some of the English fans were a little bit worried. But then, after that goal from Henderson, it started opening up, and England did what they had to do, and they have a talented group of guys. I mean, I just think, honestly, as a La Liga fan, as a Real Madrid fan, I don't. The reason I don't want England to win is because I will not be able to withstand the amount of insane. I don't know if I can say it, but I'll say it anyway. It was the insane amount of dick riding that these guys have. Of dick riding. Of riding that they do with this team, that they do with everything that has to do with the England national team and the Premier League. I don't think I could take these pundits basically, all over themselves with this team if they were to win the World Cup. So part of me does not want that to happen. I think they would be obnoxious, and that's essentially why I don't want them to win. So, and I think they're going to have a tough time against France. I think that, obviously shutting down Mbappe is not going to be easy, although they have Kyle Walker that definitely can keep up pace, but he hasn't been 100% fit. He wasn't, he had some injury issues. We'll have to see if he'll be able to keep up pace with Mbappe. You have Maguire in the back line if they choose to put him there, who is accident prone, as many English fans know and Manchester United fans know. There. But then you have a pretty decent midfield, especially with the likes of Bellingham. But we'll have to see how they line up. It's gonna be juicy for Real Madrid fans to see Bellingham, a potential prospect for coming in. One of the 2 players that many Madridistas want to see coming in to replace. Which essentially, I guess, replaced Luka Modric, or come in to be, to be one of the new faces in that midfield for Real Madrid. He's one of the guys that the Los Blancos want. Going up against the guy that essentially has solidified his place in the starting 11 for Real Madrid, which is Aurélien Tchouaméni. Aurélien Tchouaméni is obviously a starter for the French national team. Doing a good job there. So it'd be interesting to see how this, I guess it's they're playing with 3, right? I think so. They're playing with essentially, I believe it's Tchouaméni and Rabiot as, a double pivot. At least that's what I remember seeing. And then with Griezmann sort of leading the attack, being behind the striker in Giroud. And then you have obviously, Mbappe and Dembele on the flank. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think they match up really well. Not a big fan of Rabiot. Obviously, I don't think he would be there if Pogba was in that situation. I'm wondering if you would have Rabiot, or you would. I don't know if you want to try Camavinga in a game like England, especially if he hasn't played. We'll have to see how they're gonna. But I think what the game is going to be pretty much, it's going to be very tough and played a lot in the midfield. And then it'll be how each team's defense deals with the attack from both. So how Varane and Upamecano and Koundé, if that's who they choose to start, which I think is going to be the right back, and then Theo Hernandez, how those 4 are going to be able to deal with the attack from Foden, from Harry Kane, and from Bukayo Saka, but then also seeing how Harry Maguire John Stones and company are going to be able to deal with the attack from, the French and Giroud, Mbappe, and Dembele. Most of all, Mbappe. So we're going to have to see how that's going to play out. We're going to, have to really see. That's going to be a very 50-50 game, but having Mbappe on your side, I think, is going to be a big thing for a big, obviously, advantage for France. And, if they're going to be so focused on Mbappe, there are other players in there that can score. Griezmann has played a pretty decent World Cup. Giroud is obviously scoring. Dembele, on a good day, if he's playing well and gets the space, can punish you as well. So there are opportunities for the French to score in many different ways as well. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a good game. Obviously, I said I want to go with the French. So that's my prediction there. I think it might be a tight game, 2-1. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, those are my thoughts, man. Those are my thoughts for this World Cup. Essentially, what we're seeing right now, But there's a lot. Like let's at the lineups again. So Netherlands and Argentina. We might potentially see what looks like it'll most likely be a Brazil, and then whoever goes through between Japan and Croatia, which Japan can definitely surprise us. But Croatia has a very solid midfield, and that's very important. And I don't think Croatia is going to just relax, and let they're not going to, let their guard down like some other teams like Germany and Spain did against Japan, going up in the score 1-0 and then kind of taking their foot off the gas. And then these Japanese players, this team getting good at, mounting the comeback. So Japan and Croatia is going to be an interesting game to watch. I can't wait to see it tomorrow. Then Brazil versus Korea. Honestly, I don't see Korea. Japan versus, let me see here. So Darshil Shah. Croatia has a very technical midfield. Yes, definitely technical midfield. I'm loving the likes of Kovacic, Brozovic, and Modric. Those are two, Kovacic and Modric. I think Kovacic was always very underrated, didn't get as many chances as he should have at Real Madrid. I've always liked him. And I think him and Modric, obviously, besides being very good players, they have very good chemistry. They're friends off the pitch. They're two very players that are very tight off the pitch in their personal lives. And then obviously, I think Brozovic. I think these teams from the Balkans, these teams, from the former Yugoslav republics, they've always been difficult teams. I think they're very strong teams, and Croatia has shown to do that. Obviously, going to the finals in 2018. So I think Croatia, I honestly want Croatia to get out of that. I want Croatia to beat Japan. I just think that they can't let their guard down against Japan, because this Japanese team has shown that they also have, you put there that Japan has to be ready to run. Yes, but I think Japan is ready to run. I think if one thing we've seen from these blue samurai, is essentially that they never say die. They're always attacking, always attacking, always attacking. I think a lot of the Asian teams are like that. They just don't quit. South Korea, I think, is the same way as that, but I don't think Korea has shown the same talent. And up against the Brazil team, I think it's going to be very difficult. So I think Brazil goes through, and then it's going to be determining is going to be, Japan and Croatia who goes through. But I'm going with my boy Luka Modric. That's who I'm going with. I think he's gonna work his magic and take the Croatian team to the quarterfinals. And I'd like to see it up against Brazil. Maybe we can get a surprise there. Morocco versus Spain. We'll see what happens on Tuesday. I think Spain is the favorite going there, but I like it. I like the dynamics. I think Morocco is very interesting. Like I said, it's got a very socio-political sort of thing to it, with a lot of the players from Morocco, the players on the Moroccan team, some of them being born in Spain. Most of them playing their football in Spain. Not most of them, but some of them playing their football in Spain, like the likes of El Nesiri, Munir, Bono, And then you have, Ashraf Hakimi obviously was played for, it was born in Spain, I believe, and comes from the cantera of Real Madrid and grew up in the Spanish system. So essentially, I think that's, there. Then you have Hakim Ziyech. They have a lot of great players in Morocco. So I can think they can be surprising. We saw Spain get surprised by Japan. Can Morocco surprise them? That is going to be an interesting game. I'm really looking at that one. And like I said, I think there's an upset left. And that would be the biggest upset for me is Morocco versus Spain. Portugal and Switzerland, I see them because I see Switzerland being sort of a tight, well-organized team. I think that is a team that can give Portugal some problems. Obviously, they have, Breel Embolo is a very, very quick forward. He's doing good things at Monaco. You have Granit Xhaka, who is obviously a very hardcore dude, and does well in the midfield there. But Portugal is full of talent. And, I hopefully want to see a Cristiano Ronaldo masterclass. Hopefully the last one we'll ever see in the World Cup, or the last run we'll ever see from him in the World Cup. Hopefully it comes to fruition, but we'll see. But they have a lot of other players that can score. Bruno Fernandes having a great World Cup so far. Bernardo Silva, Joao Felix, Rafael Leao. Xhaka, you said Xhaka has been sensational this season. Portugal need to win the midfield battle. I am 100% on board with that. And so we have to see who they're going to put there. Are they going to put in the midfield? Is it going to be Bruno? I wonder, they're going to go with Carvalho, or are they going to go with Ruben Neves? Are they going to go with Danilo Pereira? I think Pereira might be injured. I think one of the big losses there for Portugal, and this is in their fullbacks, Cancelo has disappointed me. He hasn't been good in this World Cup. And then Rafael Guerreiro has been pretty decent, but losing Nuno Mendes, I think, was a big blow for the defense in Portugal. But they got Ruben Dias and they have Pepe, who I think Pepe has been fantastic at 38 years old or 37 years old, playing the way he's been playing. Just that leadership, that grittiness that he had when he played for Real Madrid. I am super excited to see, hopefully Portugal goes through. I want them to go through. Maybe we see the Portugal versus Spain. Maybe we see Portugal versus Morocco. That'll be, let's see, probably Neves, William, and Bruno of number 10. Yeah, so I'm thinking Neves and William Carvalho. Yeah, I like where you're going. It seems like that's the midfield he's been looking at, right? But you said Neves. Palhinha has been doing a good job at Fulham, and I think he would be very interesting there. And Bernardo as a 10 with Bernardo Silva as a 10 with Bruno on the wing. I think it would be opposite. Doesn't Bruno more used to? I'm sorry, I think Bernardo's more used to playing on the wing than Bruno is. But either way, those two guys. I mean, Bernardo is incredible, whipping crosses into the box, dribbling. I think I think that's a good lineup too. It just depends on how much he wants to. For me, how much I think if you put Bruno and you put Bernardo in the midfield, you're definitely going for a more attacking midfield. Well, no, you're talking about putting him on the wing. Okay, so Bernardo and Palhinha. Okay, so we'll see. I got you. Bruno's crossing should be utilized more. Okay, yeah. So I mean, I think that could be interesting, but then you're kind of taking a little bit of bite. Well, no, you got Neves and Palhinha there to help Bernardo. So you're right. I think that could be a good idea. Don't know if he's going to use it like that. We don't see Fernando Santos really make a lot of moves like that, so we'll have to see how he does it. But if they want to win, he's got to be, he's got to be trying new things, and we're obviously going to see Cristiano. I don't think Rafael Leao starts, although I would love to see him start. I think he's, such a good player. He's been doing so well at Milan. So quick. Obviously, every time he's come on, he's made a difference. So we'll see how that goes against Switzerland. But Switzerland is doing very well. Like you said, Shaka has been doing great this season. And with his season, and in addition to that, obviously Real Mbolo is a very strong, physical, quick striker. So there's a lot of players there that can do stuff for Switzerland. Sherdan Shaqiri, still that just small rock man made out of rock, essentially, still bringing still scoring and still providing that grittiness. I think like you said, I hope Leo starts. I mean, I think he would love to perform. I mean, and he will show it. I mean, he's already shown in this World Cup that he can score and he can put goals in when needed. So I would be interested in seeing him, obviously. But that's it. I mean, I think we're going to see, those are the games that are left, because obviously for me, Japan, Croatia, like I said, it's kind of more up in the air. Brazil, Korea, I really would be very surprised if the upset is Korea. Morocco, Spain, I'm going towards obviously Spain, but I think I want to see what this Morocco team can do. And then Portugal or Switzerland, going to be tight, but I think Portugal makes it. But like I said, I want to see a team, and this is the thing, chat. I want to see a team. I think what it is I want to see a team that's never won before. So obviously, I think as we're starting to get to these places, right, where now we're seeing Brazil is in it. Well, with England and France, we already knock out a previous World Cup winner, right? With Spain versus Portugal, let's say it's Spain versus Portugal, you can potentially knock out another World Cup winner if Portugal advances and Spain doesn't. With Brazil against Croatia or Japan, we'll have to see how that goes. But Brazil is the perennial World Cup winner, and then Netherlands, which I think will beat Argentina, at least in my eyes. I think they can beat them unless Messi just completely comes alive and shows some magic, which isn't the usual thing for him when it's some of these bigger games in the World Cup. We'll see what happens. But I think, I would love to see Netherlands also making a run because, they've been so close and never won. But that's the story right now. That's where I'm at. That is where I'm at in my descriptions and I guess you would call it my predictions. I think this has been such an interesting World Cup. It started the group stages. Like, the funny thing is, the group stages always give us a few surprises, a few losses, and it gives us it gave us some surprises and losses. Some people made it through that we never expected to make it through. But then it always kind of sucks that it always kind of gets to where these teams that always are the winners, that are always the guys, the powerhouses essentially, which you can't take away from them because they are powerhouses, start moving in there. But you kind of always want to root for the teams that have never won it. So I would love to see, like I say, Portugal, a swan song for Cristiano. Netherlands, always close, but never enough. A potential run for Japan or Croatia. Maybe, but they're going to run up against the Brazil team, which, Darshil, you're saying Brazil is spoiled for riches. Rodrigo for Neymar is such a good option. Rodrigo always delivers. Yes, for Real Madrid, he's been like our super sub in scoring whenever, we need him. He's showing up and he's having a great season. He's been looking good. He's been growing, I think, exponentially as of late as a player. He's absolutely phenomenal. And it's the crazy thing with Brazil is that you have 11 players on the bench that could essentially be the starting 11 for any team anywhere in the world, any club, any national team. Let's say if there was a Brazil 2, you could essentially have another team. They could have another starting 11 that could potentially go on to win the World Cup. So you have two potential winning World Cup winning sides on the bench. On that team. You have one that will start the game and then a potential World Cup winning 11 that is just sitting on the bench. That is the crazy thing about Brazil. And the thing is, the experience that they have now, all these younger guys that maybe, let's say in Copa America, didn't have it just yet, are getting it now. They maybe did, they didn't have it in the 2018 World Cup. They're getting it now, so this is them really coming into fruition, and they're really, just so brutal. I mean, obviously, I think out of everybody, and I don't think I've said it yet, but out of everybody that I've seen in this World Cup so far, I do believe Brazil is the absolute favorite to take it home. If you put Brazil in the final against France, I think that might be a toss-up, but I still think Brazil takes it. A rematch of that 1998 France final. We would see that. Or essentially I say we can see in the semifinal, we might see a rematch of the final of the Copa America. Or we can see a Brazil, let's say if push comes to shove, it's a Brazil-England. I still favor Brazil. If it's a Brazil-Portugal, I still favor Brazil. And if it's a Brazil-Spain, I kind of still favor Brazil. I don't know. Those are the ones that I kind of see, that's where I see things going, but you never know. The World Cup is crazy. It's a time when anything can happen, but at the same time, when the teams get into their stride, and they start working into their stride, getting into their stride, and getting comfortable, then I think what happens is essentially you start seeing the best parts of each team really starting to show itself, and that's where I feel like. That's why these bigger teams that have experience start taking over and their quality starts taking over. They might be a little shaky at the beginning, but then they start taking over. And that's why, the upsets might just get you so far up until maybe making it into the semifinal and making it into the top 4 in the world. But then after that, it might be one of the big killers. But you never know. Croatia surprised us in 2018. Hopefully somebody else can surprise us. So that's it, guys. That is the podcast. Like I said, if you are watching on the live stream, thank you guys for watching on the live stream. I'm going to be doing these every Saturday around this time. So essentially it's 10 p.m. Eastern time here in the United States. I don't know what time that is in your parts of the world, but essentially I'm going to be doing it pretty much then. And then also the podcast. So if you missed the live stream right now, the podcast version of that will go up on my channel. So you can see it there. Greetings to Colorado, Darshil. So, is it cold out there? Pretty sure. Is it starting to snow, or are you guys getting snow? So anyway, yeah. So thank you guys, and listen to the podcast. If you haven't, like I said, if you haven't caught the live stream, you're going to catch it on the podcast. If you're listening to this, of course, those games have already occurred. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Well, we'll see. Football is a beautiful sport. It's what unites us all. A la Madrid, of course. We have some Madridistas playing in these games, especially Croatia tomorrow. Japan, we have Takefusa Kubo. He doesn't really play for us anymore. He's, but he's still a Madridista that was once with us. So, different. And Portugal as well has, Cristiano Ronaldo. Spain has, of course, Madridistas. Morocco, former Madridista Ashraf Hakimi. So we got, and then of course Brazil has our boys. So a lot of Madridistas still in the tournament, and still, we're looking at all of them. So once again, guys, thank you for listening. And remember, follow us at Inadamas. Pepe 2, thank you. Pepe 2 from Portugal, legend, defender, Pepe from Portugal. So, legendary defender that played for Real Madrid, was a scourge to many when he played for Real Madrid. So once again, guys, Inadamas Podcast on Twitter, Inadamas Podcast on Twitch, on YouTube. You can find us, of course, on Facebook at Inadamas Podcast, and on Instagram at YNM Podcast. You can check us out there, guys. We are on all the outlets for where you want to listen to podcasts: Spotify, iTunes, or what is Apple Podcasts now, essentially Google Podcasts, TuneIn, you name it. We're everywhere. Thank you guys for listening. It's been a pleasure, and I will talk to you guys all again soon. Thank you very much.